The story goes that Senator Fulbright had a staff member that was helping him, and he went on to become a Rhodes Scholar and was leaving, and there was a gentleman that followed him. The gentleman that was leaving to become a Rhodes Scholar thought he was impacting foreign policy. His name was Bill Clinton. And our speaker, John Elrod, realized that all he was doing was running the mail. Please welcome him.
President of the United States, and I'm so So it's my honor to introduce Mark to you. Mark is one of the few people other than my 92-year-old mother that I've known for over 60 years. We had the privilege of growing up in an age of innocence and as barefoot kids on Sanger Creek in downtown Silent Springs, Arkansas. I can't imagine anything more delicious than that experience. Scott Manlettingham followed right behind us. Mark's father, Bill, was one of the true pioneers in the poultry industry. He's right up there in the pantheon with John Tyson and Lloyd Peterson and Jim George and some of the other names that we all know from the poultry industry. Unfortunately, Bill died way too young, and at the age of 27, Mark was handed the reins of a $14 million company that was on wobbly legs. During the last 40 years, I'm going to steal his thunder. I think he's going to talk about these issues, but during the last 40 years, he's turned into $1 billion company. And he's done that through some tough times. He runs a very ethical, honorable organization, and those are the expectations that he has in everybody works for, whether it's somebody in the processing facility or one of his executives. They are ethical, and they approach their customers that way, and they expect their vendors and people who do business with them to have the same approach and the same business philosophy. So I'm very proud to introduce to you my friend of 60 years, Mark Simmons. Mark, come on up.
I appreciate you coming out to hear me this morning. I'm not going to talk as much about Simmons, maybe as you might expect, to leave those for questions. About a year ago, or a little more, Scott Simon asked me, Scott's with the Nature Conservancy, head of the Conservancy here in Arkansas. He's going to follow me and give you some information. Scott's back here. He asked me to talk at the corporate luncheon, and I think maybe, was anybody at that TNC corporate luncheon? Maybe Tim. Good. So Tim's going to get to hear this talk. At that luncheon, I spoke about why I am a supporter of the Conservancy, and that follows some of the things that John talked about. And I had the fortunate opportunity of having a long time between the time Scott asked me and the time I actually had to speak. And in that interim period, I had the opportunity to go to Australia and New Zealand on a vacation. And it was the only tour that Diane and I have ever done, organized tour. And it was an organized tour, old folks in the bus. and every day we had to move one seat on the bus, and so you got to sit across the aisle.
Did you have Velcro tabs on your shoes?
No, I kept slip-ons on. But anyway, so I knew I was going to give this corporate talk, or this talk for lunch for the TNC, and I stew these things over in my mind. I'm not a polished speaker, and I don't do speeches, I can talk.
It took me 2 years to get him to come speak to us.
So, and I had it already prepared. So I asked Scott to help me a little bit on preparing the talk, and he said, I said, what do you want me to talk about? He says, just go ahead and tell everybody how great the Nature Conservancy is. I'd been on the board and been there for a number of years. And I had been aware of the Conservancy. I think the first time I saw the Conservancy sign was in St. Croix, and the Conservancy had been given or acquired a significant portion of the island of St. Croix on one end. It's not necessarily the pretty end, but they're conservative. And keeping it undeveloped for future generations. I've been to Conservancy field trips in Eleuthera, and I've been on a place that you can go to here in Northwest Arkansas, and I hope that Scott has some pictures later of Smith Creek, which is a wonderful place that's part of the Conservancy's holdings here in over in the Buffalo River. Just a gorgeous thing. And the Conservancy has had some taglines that I love: protecting nature, preserving life. This was the one that I saw originally: saving the last great places on earth. That's a great tagline. I think that's a wonderful thing for them to do. Scott said to me, you know, why don't you talk about why conservation is important? And I came up with, you know, it's just the right thing to do for society. That's one of the things that's important. And it was interesting, on my trip to Australia and New Zealand, the guides, this was not an enviro tour or an ecological tour, it was just a tour, but our guides there spoke a lot about the impact that man had on those two, on the continent of Australia and then the islands of New Zealand. And we got to talking about it amongst our group some. And it was interesting that one of the people that was there was a man and wife couple who were both physicians. He had been a pediatric radiologist, and his wife was a pediatric endocrinologist. I have a hard time saying that, much less knowing what it means. But they were also Hindus, and I had never had a serious conversation with a Hindu person with Hindu religion. And we were sitting across the aisle from us, and we were talking as we drove around Ayers Rock, as we know it, but as the natives in Australia know it, is called Uluru, and that's the big monolith out in the middle of Australia that's 500-600 feet high, half mile or a mile long, and I should have a photograph of it. But we were talking about respecting nature. He teaches a class in his Hindu temple here in the United States of young people, and part of that is environmental. And he quoted me a prayer that he says a lot of times, and he teaches this to his class. It was something that I picked up on, but I couldn't repeat. So it was something like, when I get up in the morning, before I get out of bed, I pray that I won't step on the environment too much, because the only way I can get out and help my fellow man is by getting out of bed and putting my feet on the precious earth. And that's about as good as I could do. So we had the opportunity to go to dinner with him a week or 2 weeks later, and I asked him to write the prayer. So he got the back of the menu and wrote that down. He handed it to me, and I had the same reaction you did. I liked it. And so then I handed it back and says, "We'll do it in English." He did that. Meaning that's the script of English. And so then I said, "Oh, come on, Sri." And so he did that. And all on the same sheet of paper. And that's a little hard to read, but that's his handwriting. So I had typed up, and I really love this prayer. And basically it talks about, oh, Mother Earth, we all are. And I'll let you read it. But isn't that a great way to think about the world as we get up each morning? And he uses this prayer as his teaching tool in his young people's life. I have a hard time reading it without getting all teared up. And I'm serious about this, so that's why I'm not reading it to you. But all of the world's religions, I should say, a lot of the world's religions have similar kinds of things. And I probably should have, if I'd known Lowell was going to be here today, I would have consulted with him and said, help me find a Christian verse out of the Bible that talks about how we must honor our earth. And I had found this one. It may not be the best one out of the Bible, but it is one. And I didn't have enough resources or time to go through other religions, but I think I know that I've heard other religions that do things. So we get back to why is conservation important? Well, one thing is the right thing to do for society, but for us as business people, it's a good business strategy. And if we respect the environment and we show respect for it, we show respect for ourselves and our fellow man. And it's one way that we can demonstrate our integrity. John, I appreciate your comments. Helps you attract good people. Helps you, it's a selling point with your customers. You know, Walmart's got a major green initiative, and lots of other companies do. And we get asked about what we do as a business. And it also, if you really truly respect it and protect it, it reduces your business risk. Helps keep you from being sued, if you will. Now, in my case, even though I respect the environment, it didn't keep the Attorney General state including being on the lawsuit. But anyway, it's also great community relations. When you help keep Sager Creek clean through Solomon Springs, and employees go on cleanup days and tree planting days, people there sit and they respect that. So how do we work at Simmons to do that? Well, this is our mission statement, and it's a 5-point mission statement. The people of Simmons are building a great company using innovative ideas to provide quality food products and services to a changing world. And basically the people of Simmons says, it's all of us. It's not Mark, it's not Todd, it's all of us. Building a great company says, hey, we've got a goal, we know we're not there. We're still building, we're working. Innovative ideas, that's one thing that you guys are about. We've got to look for new ways and better ways of doing things every day. Quality food products and services, that puts a boundary around what Simmons does. And we're not a high-tech company as far as making downhole equipment or so on. We provide food, okay? Almost everything that we do works in that boundary. Changing world, man, does it change. If we were doing the same things today that we did 5 years ago, we wouldn't be in business. So, in the early 80s, we sat down and set out this list of values. And if you don't have a value statement, you probably should. And you ought to think about it and use this as a tool to demonstrate your values to the folk you work with. Well, we don't put these in a particular order. They're all important. But a couple we use directly with our environmental issue is we say we're going to be good stewards of our environment. Very straightforward. Tell people, hey, we want to do the right thing for the environment. So, you know, we've tried to live those things. Part of that is that I've been very involved in different organizations. Illinois River Watershed Partnership, I was founded. I've been fortunate enough to ask to be on the TNC's board. And Archie Schaefer, Tyson, and Joel Albright, a friend of John's and mine and Scott's from over in Solomon Springs, were instrumental in making me understand how important the TNC is to the world. And so I became a member and then was asked to be on the board. And they do a huge amount of stuff all over the world. A huge amount of stuff in Arkansas. a lot of stuff in Northwest Arkansas, and I appreciate their presence here and around the world. And I asked Scott to come and talk to you guys. Scott's the head of the TNC in Arkansas. But I asked him to come and talk to you guys and demonstrate to you some of the stuff that we're doing up here in Northwest Arkansas to protect our climate. So I'm going to turn this over to Scott.
Well, you can see why, how fortunate anybody would be to get to work with Mark Simmons and have him on. We got to learn a lot. So thank you for everything you do for conservation, because it's very impressive. Tim, thanks for including us and inviting us.
Thank you very much.
How many of you all had heard about the Nature Conservancy before Mark described it? So many of you, so you got the gist. I mean, we're a very practical, on-the-ground conservation organization. Work with private landowners, a lot of businesses, agencies, on conservation solutions to problems that everybody can get behind and feel really good about at the end. And we use, and our strategy is to use our lands. We own about 40,000 acres currently in Arkansas. We've acquired about 300,000 in Arkansas over the 30 years that we've been working here as demonstration sites for the partnerships that form around them to learn things and practice things and test things so that we can then apply them on a larger scale. And so today, what I thought I'd do is tell some stories about our 5 main projects, programs, strategies, 3 of which are in Northwest Arkansas, and then the last 2 are in other parts of the state. Anybody know this river?
Is it in Arkansas?
It's in Arkansas.
Is it the Big Piney?
It is. Good guess. That is the Big Piney. And the Nature Conservancy Preserve is right here, donated by a man, a trustee from Iowa, whose family grew up in Arkansas and had the land here for 100 years. Really neat, beautiful place. Well, thought I'd start with our oak woodlands. So our oak ecosystem, which historically looked like this, very open, people could drive wagon trains through the Ozarks, 2 to 3 wagon trains wide. Our ecosystem is globally significant. It's the largest portion of the oak's ecosystem from the eastern seaboard to the Rocky Mountains. It has about 150 species found nowhere else in the world in this area. Pretty beautiful. And it's threatened by a variety of changes, but what's neat about Arkansas is that we work together really well. So there's a team of agencies and landowners and companies that are working to make sure that this ecosystem is in good, healthy shape, meaning big, open, wide trees with a grassy understory, so that they don't get burned up in wildfires, or they don't get eaten with insect outbreaks like we see with some of the dense forests out west. And a lot of the work to accomplish this is restoring fire naturally to the landscape. This is one of our burn crews at Pinnacle Mountain State Park near Little Rock, which is one of the demonstration sites. But the national forests and the state agencies and others have really ramped up the prescribed burning. You've probably seen some of the smoke. But all of it is to prevent worse problems down the road. And has anyone ever been on a prescribed burn? Or ever purposefully set the woods on fire? I mean, people get paid to do this. I just thought I'd volunteered to put fires.
What do you mean by purposely?
Purposefully, with a specific goals, with a very carefully designed plan to accomplish those goals and protect people and structures nearby. Well, this is a burn from a few days ago. No. I just wanted to show you what one looks like. There's a fire. This is the head fire going with the wind. This is the little backing fire, which is backing onto a fire line which has just been cleared of grass and leaves, as you can see.
Where's Joe Wilbright?
Joe Wilbright is not here. Behind me is a fire engine and about 8 crew members. But it's a relatively, normal mid-winter, early spring burn in Arkansas. That's what one looks like. But here's the results, and this is what we're striving for. And so now in Arkansas, there are about 200,000 acres of our priority restoration areas across the Ozarks that look like this. Flowery in the understory, that's woodland sunflower, and open and healthy. We have a wildfire in here.
Are the flowers natural, or do you?
Flowers are natural.
Oh, really?
Prior to what this used to look like, the woods looked like most of our Ozark woods. It's very green, but it's very dense. You know, this has about 50 trees per acre. Much of what we see when we drive down the road will have 200 trees per acre. No wildflowers. And all this was 3 burns. This is White Oak Mountain, just north of Russellville. So when you're driving along Interstate 40 and you see that mountain north of Russellville, this is what it looks like up close. And all of those species are just in the understory. They just need sunlight and a little bit of fire to return. Several of the most important demonstration sites are in northwest Arkansas. So several we have with state parks, both at Hobbs State Park, which was a place the Nature Conservancy purchased with the banking community in northwest Arkansas. This one's at Devil's Den. This was about 2 weeks ago, the burn at Devil's Den. One of the most interesting ones was a request from Alice Walton to manage the woods around Crystal Bridges so that they are natural and diverse. She wants the art museum set in nature. And so the Nature Conservancy is working with them, conducting the burns in those woods. We did the first burns last winter before the museum opened. We signed the contract yesterday to do the burns for this year. So I was in the museum last week and I just thought that's certainly going to be fascinating. People in the museum looking at art while fire crews are on the outside. And you can imagine, and so this gets to doing it safely. Obviously, there's a lot of logistical issues, and this is what we try to specialize in. You know, really tough burns with very specific goals, so that the agencies can look at a place like this and say, well, boy, you know, if somebody else, like Joe Wilbright of the Nature Conservancy, could do a burn here, you know, surely we can accomplish a burn safely in this other location. And so these will occur probably in the next 2 weeks. Well, underneath that beautiful carpet of forest is an absolutely fascinating ecosystem underground. You know, our karst ecosystem, I think about it as a block of Swiss cheese sitting in a half glass of water. You know, the glass of water is our aquifer. The holes in the cheese are caves. You know, and if they're above the water, that's where the bats are, and if they're below the water, that's where the crayfish and the fish are. Mike Slay is our karst ecologist and leader, and there has been an incredible route of discovery in northwest Arkansas the last few years. More than 20 new species described to science. And so a lot of the work is just inventorying these caves, finding them, finding all the critters that are inside that all need clean groundwater. You know, the same groundwater that's feeding Beaver Lake or that we're drinking in rural areas. Mike and some other colleagues just published a book, Cave Life of Oklahoma and Arkansas. We'll probably do a book signing somewhere in northwest Arkansas in the next month or two. If you see it, Mike's a great guy. But another thing that they've worked on, because we want to use this information to help us make good decisions, was to work with the development community. This was actually the request of several developers that said, you know, we're living in this karst landscape. We don't want to build roads or houses where a sinkhole is going to form, or where if there's a problem, it could pollute the groundwater. Because in a karst landscape, you imagine Swiss cheese, there's some places if you spilled on it, it'll just stay in the soil. But there's other places where there's a direct conduit to the groundwater at Beaver Lake with no filtration. And so that's what this map shows. It codes areas in northwest Arkansas, and this year it was expanded throughout the whole Ozarks by our northwest Arkansas staff. And Ethan Inlander, who Tim mentioned, put this together. You guys here in the back. But green, you know, areas not as susceptible to polluting the groundwater. Versus red, you can see some of the fault lines in northwest Arkansas or some of the losing streams where there can be a problem, and you just need to do things a little differently in how you develop. So it's been very useful. It's on the Northwest Arkansas Planning Commission's webpage for people to use with no drama, which is what we want. Be a good tool. Well, flowing out of all of these great caves are some of the best rivers in the whole world. And we love them for canoeing and fishing, but they also have, each one of our Ozark rivers has a fish, a crayfish, or a mussel only known from that river and nowhere else. Here's the Strawberry River darter, and the Harlequin darter, and the yellow cheek darter from the Little Red. And you hear a lot about this in Northwest Arkansas, just the challenges with our water quality from sedimentation. You know, the sources, it's no surprise. But eroding stream banks like this one bank contributes 380 dump truck loads of sediment per flood, per big flood. Gravel roads contribute about 1/3 of the sediment, and it's a gravel road that's not maintained well. So a properly maintained road would have a turnoff where all of this sediment is just going into the woods, not running down the side of the road into the creek where it then can go into the Illinois River. And cattle will just direct access to the stream. So what we do, and Ethan leads our Ozark Rivers work, is just to map out where these problem areas are. This is in our roads area. This is a typical watershed in the Ozarks, in Northwest Arkansas. The red are where most of the sediment's coming from. And then go about designing, fixing it, conducting workshops. There's Ethan at the lectern with county judges. And this is a very popular program with the county judges because a gravel road that is maintained well costs less money to maintain. So there's a financial incentive for them. And then a lot of gas industry contractors, and Chesapeake, when they were in Arkansas, sponsored all of these workshops. And we've done them in Benton County, Washington County, Carroll County, and just do a few a year around the Ozarks. And the same goes for repairing eroding stream banks. Identify the worst spots, develop a plan, and then go to fix it. And at the time we started this program, there were very few contractors in the state that did stream restoration. And what's involved, instead of putting rock on the eroding part of the bank, the design involves putting in structures, this is called a J-hook, where you put them actually in the stream itself to encourage the stream away from the problem area. And they have withstood the floods of the last 2 years wonderfully. And this is what that same structure looks like afterwards. You know, very natural. Great bass fishing here, good kayaking over it. This is one that Ethan did that Mark and the group went and looked at this winter along a little Osage Creek, just west of Cave Springs Cave.
Tim was there.
And Tim was there. Yeah, and Tim was there. Yep. And this was designed as a pilot on doing projects like this in the Illinois River watershed, which was what the Illinois River Watershed Partnership was most interested in. One of our staff, Tim Snell, is on the board. But also there's a spring here with 2 really rare fish. And the river was not only eroding here, but it was eroding into the spring. So it was a win-win for both organizations. And we plan on doing a lot more of these. This year, the next one will be on the Kings. Has anyone been to our Kings River Preserve? Okay, there's another place to go. The Nature Conservancy acquired, with the support of our membership, 7 miles of the Kings River just southeast of Eureka Springs. It is open to the public for canoeing and kayaking and fishing. It is beautiful. This year, a few months ago, we added this tract right here, another 1/4 mile of the river. And we're just going to fill in here because it's an important river in Arkansas, but we want people to have as many opportunities as possible to get out and enjoy the natural state. Tree planting there this week. The Conservancy is doing with several timber companies is highlighting a style of forestry that will return a good economic return to the landowner without clear cutting all the trees so that they have lots of opportunities in the future. They're not tied into a certain style of forestry, and they can provide really great wildlife habitat. We have a series of demonstration sites in South Arkansas where we acquire land. This is along Felsenthal National Wildlife Refuge. We bought 3,600 acres there a few months ago. Thin the woods, set them on fire, and then restore habitat. And if the habitat's good enough, we'll bring back some of the rare birds and endangered species that used to be there. This is one called the red-cockaded woodpecker that the Natural Heritage Commission, Fish and Wildlife Service, and Potlatch and us have restored together here. It's been really exciting. And then in eastern Arkansas, here we call the Big Woods. This is that block of bottomland hardwoods and swamps. Second largest area like that in North America is here in Arkansas. It borders the 3 rivers, the White, the Cache, and Bayou de View. A lot of the work here is bringing the woods back. So reforestation with private landowners that are farming land that's really too wet to be farmed profitably. And so they work with us to enroll it in various government programs to reforest it. And here are all the tracts. We did about 10,000 acres of reforestation in the last 2 years. It's about 3 million trees, all the tracts within the Cache River and Bayou View watershed. And there's one in particular I wanted to point out. If you drive Interstate 40 between Little Rock and Memphis, you cross over the White River, and then you cross over the Cache River right here. This property right here was owned by Conway George's estate, and we reforested it this past month. And so you'll be able to see all those baby trees growing right along I-40. It'll be really neat. But the real exciting work in the Delta is all about bringing the rivers back. As you know, many of our rivers in eastern Arkansas have been channelized and ditched and straightened so that we can increase agriculture, which built, our great agricultural economy. But there were some unintended consequences. And so a team are restoring many of these rivers. And the most exciting one right now is on the Cache River. This is the channelized portion of the Cache. Not natural, very straight, no trees on the side, filled with mud, provides no habitat, and is causing lots of problems downstream and upstream. And so the plan here is to move the river back into its old meandering natural channel. And the exciting thing is the people who are doing it are the Corps of Engineers, working with us and working with Ducks Unlimited and Game and Fish Commission, because that's really what it's all about. I mean, we use our natural resources to build our economy. And sometimes we have some impacts, and when we do that, we just come together, adjust our plan, and restore the land so that it's there to provide us the benefits and the things that we need from it in the future. So with that, thanks for letting me come by and just tell a few good stories about conservation in Arkansas. Really appreciate it all.